The engine roared, then sputtered, a dying beast under my hands. I stood in the dim light of Jake's garage, my fingers slick with oil, trying to breathe life into his old Mustang. But it wasn't the car that had my heart racing. It was the man standing just behind me, his shadow falling over the hood like a storm cloud. I'm Ethan Carter, 24, a mechanic with a knack for fixing things that others gave up on. Cars, mostly, but sometimes people too. I grew up in Willow Creek, a sleepy town in upstate New York where everyone knows your name and your secrets. Jake, my best friend since high school, had called me that morning, frantic about his car breaking down again. "Ethan, you're my only hope," he'd pleaded. So here I was, elbow deep in grease, trying to save his pride and joy. The garage smelled of motor oil and rust, a familiar comfort. I tightened a bolt, my focus narrowing to the rhythm of the work, until I felt him. Marcus, Jake's uncle, had been a ghost in our conversations, a man who'd left town years ago and only recently returned. He stood in the doorway now, his broad frame filling the space, his dark eyes locked on me. I'd heard stories about Marcus Reed, former Marine, wanderer, the kind of guy who carried his past like a heavy toolbox. But nothing prepared me for the way his gaze pinned me, like he saw something in me I hadn't even admitted to myself. "You're good with your hands," Marcus said, his voice low, gravelly, like tires on a dirt road. I froze, wrench slipping in my grip. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them, like they carried a weight I wasn't ready to lift. "Thanks," I muttered, wiping sweat from my brow, pretending the heat in my cheeks was from the summer air. I turned back to the engine, but my hands trembled. Marcus stepped closer, his boots scuffing the concrete floor. I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and sharp, cutting through the garage's stale air. "Jake says you're the best mechanic he knows," he continued, leaning against the workbench, his arms crossed. His leather jacket creaked, and I caught a glimpse of a tattoo peeking out from under his sleeve, a faded anchor, a relic of his past. "But you don't look like you belong in a place like this." I laughed, short and nervous. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a wrench, turning it over in his hands like it was a puzzle. "You've got a spark, Ethan. This town is too small for someone like you." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. No one in Willow Creek had ever said anything like that to me. I was just Ethan, the kid who fixed cars and kept his head down. But Marcus's words stirred something deep, something I'd buried under years of small-town expectations. I'd always known I was different, not just in the way I loved cars, but in the way I loved. I'd never said it out loud, not to Jake, not to anyone. In a town like this, you didn't talk about being gay. You just existed. "Car's almost done," I said, dodging his gaze. "Just needs a new spark plug and some TLC." Marcus chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "TLC, huh? You give that to everyone, or just the cars?" I glanced up, caught off guard, and our eyes locked. His were deep brown, flecked with gold, and they held a challenge, a question I wasn't sure I could answer. My heart pounded, and for a moment, the garage felt too small, the air too thick. "Ethan," Jake's voice broke the spell, echoing from the house. "You done yet?" "I'm starving." I blinked, stepping back, the moment shattering. Marcus smirked, setting the wrench down. "Better not keep him waiting," he said, but his eyes said something else entirely. As I packed up my tools, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, like a gear clicking into place. Marcus Reed wasn't just Jake's uncle. He was a spark, and I was the engine, waiting to see if I'd catch fire. The next day, I was back at the garage. Jake had begged me to double-check the Mustang before he took it on a road trip. I didn't mind. Working on cars was my escape, my way of making sense of a world that often felt too chaotic. But Marcus was there again, lingering like a shadow I couldn't shake. "You're back," he said, leaning against the garage door, a coffee mug in hand. The morning sun caught the stubble on his jaw, and I had to look away before my thoughts betrayed me. "Jake's paranoid about his car," I said, popping the hood. "Wants it perfect." Marcus nodded, sipping his coffee. "He's lucky to have you. Most people don't care enough to get their hands dirty." I shrugged, focusing on the engine, but his presence was a distraction. He moved closer, watching me work, and I could feel the weight of his attention. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something heavier, something that made my skin prickle. "You ever think about leaving Willow Creek?" he asked suddenly. I paused, a spark plug in my hand. "Sometimes. But this is home. My mom's here, my shop's here. Hard to just walk away." Marcus nodded, but his eyes were distant, like he was seeing something I couldn't. "I left when I was your age. Thought I'd find myself out there. Ended up finding a lot of things I wasn't ready for." "Like what?" I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. He hesitated, then set his mug down. "Like who I am. Who I love." My breath caught. The words hung between us, raw and unguarded. I wanted to ask more, to dig into the story behind his eyes, but Jake burst in, all energy and obliviousness. "Yo, Ethan, you're a lifesaver," he said, clapping me on the back. "Car's good, right?" "Yeah," I managed my voice tight. "It's good." Jake didn't notice the tension, but Marcus did. He gave me a look that said this wasn't over, and my heart raced all over again. As I drove home that night, the road stretched out before me, dark and endless. Marcus's words echoed in my head. Who I love. I'd spent years hiding that part of myself, convincing myself it didn't matter. But now, with Marcus in the picture, I wasn't sure I could keep it buried much longer. The next week was a blur of routine, fixing cars, dodging my mom's questions about my future, and trying not to think about Marcus. But he was everywhere, like a song stuck in my head. I'd catch glimpses of him around town, at the diner, the hardware store, always with that same intense gaze that made my stomach flip. One evening, I was closing up my shop, a small garage I'd inherited from my dad, when Marcus appeared. He leaned against the doorframe, his silhouette sharp against the fading sunset. "Need a hand?" he asked, holding up a six-pack of beer. I raised an eyebrow. "You here to fix cars or drink?" He grinned, a flash of teeth that did unfair things to my pulse. "Maybe both." We ended up sitting on the hood of a beat-up Chevy, the beer cold and bitter, the air warm and heavy with summer. The conversation started easy. Cars, sports, the kind of small talk that fills the gaps. But then Marcus turned to me, his expression serious. "You ever feel like you're hiding something, Ethan?" he asked, his voice soft but piercing. I froze, the beer bottle halfway to my lips. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine. "You're good at fixing things. But you're not fixing yourself. You're holding back." My heart thudded. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but the truth was clawing its way out. "Maybe I am," I admitted, barely above a whisper. "But it's not easy. Not here." Marcus nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I know. I spent years running from it. Thought if I kept moving, I could outrun who I am. But you can't." I swallowed, my throat dry despite the beer. "What changed?" He looked away, his jaw tightening. "I met someone. Years ago, in San Francisco. He made me feel whole. But I screwed it up. Let fear win." The air between us crackled, charged with something I couldn't name. I wanted to ask more, to know everything about this man who'd walked into my life and turned it upside down. But before I could, he stood, tossing his empty bottle into the trash. "Come by the house tomorrow," he said. "Jake's out of town. I could use some help with my truck." I nodded, my voice stuck somewhere in my chest. As he walked away, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful. The next day, I pulled up to Jake's house, a sprawling old place on the edge of town. Marcus's truck was parked out front, a beat-up Ford that looked like it had seen better days. He was waiting for me, sleeves rolled up, a smudge of grease on his cheek that made him look unfairly good. "Thanks for coming," he said, tossing me a wrench. "Let's get to work." We spent the afternoon tearing into the truck, our hands moving in sync, passing tools without a word. It was easy, natural, like we'd been doing it forever. But every brush of his fingers against mine, every glance that lingered too long, set my nerves on fire. By late afternoon, we were done, the truck purring like a contented cat. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, then turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You're good at this, Ethan. But you're more than just a mechanic." I laughed, trying to deflect. "What? You think I'm destined for greatness or something?" He stepped closer, too close, and my breath hitched. I think you're destined for more than hiding. Before I could respond, he reached out, his hand brushing my arm. The touch was electric, a spark that lit up every buried feeling I'd tried to ignore. I froze, torn between running and leaning into it. Marcus, I started, but the words died as he pulled me close, his hands strong and sure. The world narrowed to the heat of his body, the scent of his skin, the way his breath ghosted over my lips. And then he kissed me. It was like the world cracked open, spilling light into all the dark places I'd kept locked away. His lips were firm, desperate, and I kissed him back, my hands clutching his shirt like it was the only thing keeping me upright. The garage, the truck, the town, it all faded, leaving just us, tangled in a moment I'd never thought I'd have. When we finally pulled apart, my heart was pounding, my mind reeling. Marcus's eyes were wide, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "I shouldn't have." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice shaking. "Don't apologize." He searched my face, then nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Okay." We stood there, the air thick with possibility, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The days after that kiss were a haze, like driving through fog with no headlights. I went through the motions, fixing cars, joking with Jake, helping my mom with groceries, but Marcus was a constant hum in my mind. Every touch, every glance, replayed in vivid detail, and I was terrified of what it meant. Willow Creek wasn't a place for men like me, or men like Marcus. I'd seen the looks, heard the whispers when someone stepped too far out of line. My dad, before he passed, had been clear about what a real man was supposed to be. I'd spent years trying to fit that mold, burying my truth under layers of grease and denial. But Marcus had cracked that shell, and I wasn't sure I could put it back together. He called me a few days later, his voice calm but insistent. "Come over tonight. I'm cooking." I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the end call button. "Marcus, I don't know if." "Please," he said, and the raw need in his voice stopped me cold. "Just dinner." So I went. The house was quiet without Jake, the air filled with the smell of garlic and tomatoes. Marcus was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of sauce, his sleeves rolled up, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. He looked so normal, like he belonged there, and it made my chest ache. "Dinner's almost ready," he said, glancing up with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hope you like pasta." We ate at the small kitchen table, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. I wanted to ask about the kiss, about what it meant, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I asked about his time in the Marines, about the places he'd been. He told me stories, about deserts and jungles, about comrades who became family, about the loneliness that followed him everywhere. "I thought I could outrun it," he said, his fork pausing over his plate. "But you can't outrun yourself." I nodded, my own fears mirrored in his words. "I've never told anyone," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "About me." Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "You don't have to hide with me, Ethan." The warmth of his touch grounded me, but it also scared me. What if someone finds out? Jake, my mom, the whole damn town. "Let them," he said fiercely. "You're not their property. You're you." I wanted to believe him, but fear was a heavy weight. We cleaned up in silence, the clink of dishes the only sound. When I turned to leave, Marcus grabbed my hand, pulling me close again. This time, there was no kiss, just a hug, his arms strong and steady, like he could hold all my broken pieces together. "Stay," he whispered, "just for a while." So I did. We sat on the couch, watching some old movie, our shoulders touching. It wasn't much, but it felt like everything. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Jake was back in town, and I hadn't told him about Marcus. I didn't even know what to say. "Hey, your uncle kissed me, and I think I'm falling for him?" It sounded insane, even in my head. I met Jake at the diner, trying to act normal, but he knew me too well. "You okay, man?" he asked, stealing a fry from my plate. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Just tired," I lied, pushing my food around. "Long week." He didn't push, but his eyes lingered, like he sensed something was off. I changed the subject, asking about his road trip, and he launched into a story about a flat tire and a sketchy gas station. I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying Marcus's arms around me. That night, I went back to the shop, needing the familiarity of engines to ground me. But Marcus was there, waiting, his truck parked out front. "Thought you might need company," he said, holding up a pizza box. We ate on the shop floor, surrounded by tools and the hum of fluorescent lights. "You're avoiding me," he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. "I'm not," I said too quickly. I don't know how to do this, Marcus. I've never." "I know," he said, his voice gentle. "But you don't have to do it alone." He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, the warmth of his skin chasing away the cold fear in my chest. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Our fears, our dreams, the lives we wanted but were too scared to claim. With every word, I felt the walls I'd built start to crumble. By the time we said goodnight, I knew I was in deep. Marcus wasn't just a spark anymore. He was a fire, and I was ready to burn. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk between fear and freedom. Marcus and I stole moments whenever we could. Late nights at the shop, quiet drives along back roads, stolen kisses in the shadows. Each touch was a rebellion, a defiance of the rules I'd lived by for so long. But the fear was always there, lurking like a storm on the horizon. Jake started to notice. "You're acting weird," he said one afternoon, tossing a basketball against the garage wall. "You got a secret girlfriend or something?" I forced a laugh, my stomach twisting. "Nah, just busy." He didn't buy it, but he didn't push either. I hated lying to him, but the truth felt like a grenade I wasn't ready to pull the pin on. Marcus, though, was relentless. He'd show up at the shop with coffee or text me late at night, his words a lifeline in the dark. "You're stronger than you think," he'd write, and I'd cling to those words like a prayer. One night, he took me to a clearing in the woods, a place he'd found years ago when he was a kid. The stars were bright, the air cool, and we lay on a blanket, our hands intertwined. "This is what I want," he said, his voice soft but certain. "You, us, no hiding." I turned to him, my heart full and aching. "I want that too. But I'm scared, Marcus. What if it all falls apart?" "Then we rebuild," he said, pulling me close. Together. His words were a promise, and for the first time, I let myself believe in it. We made love under the stars, the world falling away until it was just us, our breaths mingling, our hearts beating as one. It was messy and perfect, and I knew I'd never be the same. But reality has a way of crashing in. The next day, I was at the shop when Jake stormed in, his face red, his eyes blazing. "You and my uncle?" he shouted, throwing a wrench onto the floor. "What the hell, Ethan?" My heart stopped. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Marcus appeared behind him, his expression grim. "Jake, calm down," he said, his voice steady. "Calm down," Jake snapped. "You're messing with my best friend. What is this, some kind of midlife crisis?" "It's not like that," I said, finally finding my voice. "Jake, don't." He cut me off, his eyes flashing with betrayal. "You lied to me, Ethan. Both of you." He stormed out, leaving a silence that felt like a punch to the gut. Marcus reached for my hand, but I pulled away, my chest tight. "I can't do this," I whispered. "Not if it means losing him." Marcus's face fell, but he nodded. "I'll give you space. But I'm not going anywhere." I watched him leave, my world fracturing. I'd wanted to be brave, to claim the life Marcus made me believe in. But now, with Jake's anger burning in my mind, I wasn't sure I had the strength. The next few days were torture. Jake wouldn't answer my calls, and the shop felt emptier without Marcus's presence. I threw myself into work, fixing cars until my hands ached, but it couldn't fill the hole in my chest. My mom noticed, of course. "You look like you lost your best friend," she said one night, setting a plate of meatloaf in front of me. I winced. Something like that. She sat across from me, her eyes soft but searching. "Ethan, whatever's going on, you can tell me. You've always been my fixer, but you don't have to fix yourself alone." Her words hit hard, and before I knew it, I was spilling everything. Marcus, the kiss, Jake's anger. I braced for judgment, but she just reached for my hand, her grip warm and steady. I love you, Ethan. Always will. And if this Marcus makes you happy, you hold on to him. I cried then, the kind of ugly sobs I hadn't let out since I was a kid. She held me, and for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. But Jake was another story. I found him at the basketball court, shooting hoops alone. We need to talk, I said, my voice shaking. He didn't look at me, just kept shooting. What's there to say? You lied. I was scared, I admitted. I didn't know how to tell you. I'm gay, Jake. And I'm in love with Marcus. The ball dropped, rolling across the court. Jake finally looked at me, his eyes wide, hurt, but softening. You could have told me, man. I'm your best friend. I know, I said, my voice breaking. I'm sorry. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't get it, okay? But you're still you. And Marcus, he's family. Just don't hurt each other, all right? I nodded, relief flooding me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. That night, I went to Marcus's house, my heart in my throat. He opened the door, his eyes wary but hopeful. I'm done hiding, I said, stepping inside. I want this. I want us. He pulled me into his arms, and the world felt right again. We talked until dawn, planning a future that scared me but felt possible with him by my side. Life with Marcus was like learning to drive a new car, thrilling, terrifying, and full of unexpected turns. We kept things quiet at first, testing the waters, but Willow Creek wasn't blind. Whispers started, glances lingered, and I felt the weight of judgment every time I walked into the diner. But Marcus was my anchor. He'd hold my hand under the table, or kiss me in the shop when no one was around, and it made the world feel bearable. We started dreaming bigger, maybe leaving Willow Creek, starting fresh somewhere we could be ourselves without fear. One day, a customer, a guy I'd known since high school, made a comment at the shop. Heard you're with that Reed guy, he said, his tone sharp. Didn't peg you for that type, Carter. I froze, my wrench slipping. Before I could respond, Marcus was there, his voice calm but steel-edged. Type doesn't matter. Heart does. The guy left, and I turned to Marcus, my chest tight. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did, he said, pulling me close. You're worth it. That night, we went back to the clearing, our place under the stars. I want to leave, I said, my voice steady for the first time. With you. Somewhere we can be us. Marcus smiled, his eyes bright. Then let's do it. Together. We started planning, Seattle, maybe, or Portland, somewhere vibrant and open. It wasn't easy, my mom was supportive but sad, and Jake was still adjusting. But the more we talked, the more real it felt. One evening, as we worked on a car together, Marcus proposed an idea. Let's open a shop together. You fix the cars, I handle the business side. Partners in every way. I laughed, the sound freer than it had ever been. You're crazy. Crazy about you, he said, kissing me, and I knew I'd found my home. 6 months later, we were in Seattle, a city that hummed with life. Our shop was small but ours, a sign out front reading Carter and Reed Auto. My mom visited often, her pride in me a quiet glow. Jake came too, slowly rebuilding our friendship, his laughter a reminder of the home we'd left behind. The road hadn't been easy. There were fights, about money, about fear, about the weight of starting over. But every time, Marcus was there, his hand in mine, his voice steady. We're in this together, he'd say, and I believed him. One night, as we stood on the roof of our apartment, the city lights sprawling below, Marcus pulled me close. You changed everything, Ethan, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was lost until you. I kissed him, the world falling away. You tuned me up, I whispered, and he laughed, the sound wrapping around my heart. We weren't perfect, but we were real. And in that moment, under the vast, starry sky, I knew we'd built something worth fighting for. A life, a love, a future. Together, we'd redefined what a tune-up could mean, and I'd never look back.